Good evening, Patriot Nation. Today is January the 26th, and the world is a tinderbox with sparks flying from every direction. We've got the wolves circling the sheep, getting ready to pounce. Are we just days or weeks away from going to DEFCON 2 and possibly World War 3? We'll talk about all of that coming up on tonight's show. This is Patriot Nation. For months, I have been talking about the massive protest taking place around this planet as citizens are standing up and protesting the tyrannical mandates that are being pushed by governments across this globe. Most have been peaceful. Some of them have erupted into violence. Many of those because Antifa has shown up to stoke and start the violence. But people are sick and tired of tyrannical governments imposing all of these mandates onto them, destroying their lives and their livelihoods. People are tired of the communist agenda that is being pushed. And despite what the communist propaganda networks across this planet will lead you to believe, this is not an American viewpoint. This is a global viewpoint. Citizens on just about every country on this planet have had enough. And also, despite the communist propaganda, these protests are not dwindling. They are only increasing. They are happening more frequently in more cities and more countries, and they are getting larger and larger and larger. To add to the potential danger, our enemies no longer fear or respect America's leadership because Commie Joe has continually shown the world that once again, America is being led from a position of weakness, just like it was during the Obama administration. This was made exponentially worse when Commie Joe conducted the disastrous pullout in Afghanistan, where we left over $85 billion of state-of-the-art military weapons and vehicles for the terrorists and our enemies that they have used to resupply all of their forces with weapon systems that would have taken them decades or centuries, most likely, to acquire on their own. You've got to realize, ladies and gentlemen, that up until that day, most of ISIS and other terrorist organizations like them were using 30, 40-year-old weapons that they acquired when they defeated the Russians when they invaded Afghanistan. A lot of these weapons were very, very old. They were very heavily used. They weren't in the best repair. They didn't have things like night vision and armored vehicles and drones and targeting systems and everything else that we left for these guys. And so now you've got hundreds of thousands of weapons that are in the hands of these terrorists, just the optics of that is enough. But the fact that we have shown just how weak we are was bad enough. But the fact that they now have all this state of the art equipment and body armor and armored vehicles makes it even worse. Because now they're using that in propaganda, they are using that in recruitment. Absolutely disastrous for the safety of free nations around this planet. Because of the incompetence of the Commie Joe regime and their decision to talk and lead from a position of weakness, Iran has also been emboldened. And you see reports from around the globe of the fact that Iran and its proxies are emboldened by the lack of accountability. And one of the things that Iran has always been very good at is having these proxies that do their bidding, that they basically fund and give equipment to, and then they go out and do their little covert operations that aren't directly tied back to them because it's not official Iranian forces that are doing this. They are one of the biggest backers in a lot of the terrorist attacks throughout the region. And you've seen a large uptick in that type of activity, but you've also seen a huge uptick in the activity that has shown aggression by their naval forces in the region. There have been numerous attacks or shows of force, if you will, from the Iranian Navy, not only against U.S. ships, but also ships, military and otherwise, from other countries. It is also most likely that Iran has also reinstituted its nuclear program and is going about trying to get nuclear weapons. And all the Biden regime is willing to do is just talk tough with no actions. They want to bring them to the table, and they are playing right into their hand. They are falling for everything that Iran says, even though they don't follow through on it, even though there's no proof that they're doing anything that they say they're doing. These clueless bastards, okay. Whatever you say, Iran. It's amazing to me. I'd say it's amazing how big of idiots they are, but in reality, I truly do believe that they are not as big idiots as that they're acting. It is all part of a very calculated and very carefully planned out agenda. And in addition to all of the dangerous activities taking place with Iran, you've also got North Korea, who has restarted its missile program and restarted its nuclear program. And you have them, lobbing missiles all around. You have them talking tough once again, because Again, they have zero fear and zero respect for Commie Joe or America's resolve to stop and to stand up to them. And I think, even worse than that, because both of those countries realistically have very limited reach in any of their programs. I mean, they have a very small, very lacking militaries. And so I'm not as afraid of Iran, or North Korea as what I am of the other two superpowers, China and Russia. And there is a lot of evidence lately that China is putting a lot of resources, both financial and possibly even military wise, into Cuba. There are a lot of different places that are reporting that China is putting in billions of dollars into Cuba, whether it's things like roads or infrastructure. But the reality of what's happening here is that knowing the way that China works is they are basically buying Cuba's cooperation. And if they are spending billions, and I've seen someplace tens of billions of dollars in Cuba, that they're going to want something in return other than just business or economic. I can guarantee that there is going to be some strategic military request that is going to come with this financial backing. Much like the Soviets during the Cuban Missile Crisis saw the value of having strategic military placements that close to America, you can be damn sure that the Chinese also have that as their plan. And when you look at the fact of how the military has been doing a lot of reconnaissance, and we've had sub hunters and spy planes around the Gulf, I think that our military also has that concern. And they should. When you look at the way that China has been very strategic in the way that they do things, and they realize that they are probably going to be taking aggressive action against Taiwan after the Olympics at some point. They're not going to do it before because they're not going to risk the Olympics. They're going to let it simmer until the Olympics are over, but sometime after the Olympics, and I'm guessing it's probably going to be days or weeks after the Olympics are over, not months after the Olympics are over, before they make a play for Taiwan. And what better way to, if nothing else, divide up our forces than to move military assets into Cuba. That allows them a strategic advantage. Not only the distance, it puts America within a very close striking distance, much closer than anything off the Pacific coast. But it also ensures that we are going to have to put assets and resources into protecting from, if nothing else, a possible threat from Cuba. But wait, there's more. We've also got Russia that's moving 130,000 or more troops into the region and have basically surrounded most of Ukraine. Now, I'm a little perplexed about what's going on there because it's very overt. And I mean, Putin is a very smart guy, and I believe that he has surrounded himself with other very smart people. And I don't see his end game on this. He's been talking about growing the Russian economy, finishing out the pipeline to be able to be a bigger player in energy production. And all of this threatens that. So, given what we know about the whole one world government and the cabal and how they are as much against Putin as they were against all of the other players like Trump, it makes me wonder if a lot of what we are hearing about this and a lot of the information that we as average people about what is happening and why it's happening is all false. But whether Russia is a horrible, evil country that's going to invade Ukraine and slaughter people and try to, put someone loyal to Putin in charge, or whether it is some other sort of operation to take out the cabal players and the one world government folks, it's still a very dangerous situation. And it's getting even worse because good old Commie Joe is talking about sending 8,000 troops to the area and has actually just reassigned the Truman strike group, carrier strike group, be under NATO command and is being moved into the region. And so when you have a carrier strike group like the Truman group being moved into the region, and other countries moving their assets into the region, you know that the shizzy could hit the fizzy, as Canadian Prepper likes to say. No matter how you look at the why it becomes a very volatile situation because, again, the world is already a tinderbox that could blow up with any little spark, so to speak. And when you have so many different things going on in so many different places, and you have very major conflicts taking place, it adds to the severity and the risk that are involved in any of those things. And so that makes for a very volatile situation across the globe right now. And with that, I don't think that it would take a lot for things to go horribly wrong. Kind of like a forest fire, when you have a forest that is full of very dry kindling, one little spark could take that one little spot and turn it into hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of acres of forest fire. The same could be happening with this situation. When you have, maybe it's a false flag, maybe it's something that is planned as a spark. Maybe you've got one of the bad guys that does something on purpose to blame another player, and next thing you know, we're in a full-scale war with one or possibly both of the other superpowers on this planet. And so, when I start to look at that, if we look at the current DEFCON, we're currently at DEFCON 3. And we've basically been at DEFCON 3 since 9/11 happened. If you could please take a moment real quick and make sure that you've hit that subscribe button down over there. And then also, if you could take a minute and make sure that you share this video out with anyone that you know that would enjoy or find value in this right of center message. As I'm sure that all of you know, big tech and social media are doing everything in their power to censor the right of center message. And so we need everybody that views these videos to make sure that you take that extra minute or two and actually share them out, not only on social media, but also through email and text message to anyone that you find will be benefiting from this right of center message. And that basically means that according to the readiness levels, that means the Air Force is ready to mobilize with 15 minutes notice. And when you look at the unrest that's taking place, you look at the fact that China is most likely moving military forces, into Cuba. You look at the fact that they are most likely going to do something aggressive to Taiwan after the Olympics. And you've got Russia amassing over 130,000 troops around Ukraine and has talked very sternly about what action they're going to take. You've got the U.S. sending troops, you got NATO sending troops, you got the EU sending troops and forces. going from 3 to 2 doesn't seem that far off. Because being ready to engage in less than 6 hours with everything that's taking place doesn't seem that far off. And the scary part of this is that it's the next step to possible nuclear war. And then we have DEFCON 1, maximum readiness, immediate response. Again, when you have so many things taking place in so many different parts of the globe, in so many different countries, you've got a huge number of chess pieces on the board, if you will, and you've got so many scenarios that could be taking place. And I understand that, our military has many people that are responsible for different regions and different assets and all of those kind of things. And I know that, the military guys, especially those that, have taken place in like red cell exercises and, worked in with intelligence and planning and that sort of thing, and be able to talk about this a lot better than I can. But it's still a lot of things that are in play and a lot of different things that could go wrong. And at least as an outsider looking in, it doesn't sound like, or it doesn't seem like a very good situation to be in, because just one thing going wrong could very easily lead to a domino effect that just gets exponentially worse. And I'm sure that, a lot of you out there are possibly, former military, maybe you're former intelligence, strategic planning. Maybe you have a different insight into my thoughts on this. So leave a comment down below. What do you guys think with everything that's going on? Am I completely off base? Is it really not as dire as my analysis thinks it is? I've tried to watch a bunch of different people. I try to look at, a bunch of different information. And even when you have the communist propaganda media starting to talk about how dangerous all of these situations are in, and they're not even talking about a lot of the Chinese stuff, because we all know that most of them have been bought and paid for by the Chinese Communist Party. But when you look at the fact that you've got all the China stuff taking place, all the economic stuff related to China taking place, you've got the whole situation with Taiwan in play, and now you add in the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. You add in the fact that we just gave terrorists $85 billion worth of state-of-the-art military weapons and armor. You've got terrorist nations like Iran who have become emboldened. You have unstable countries like North Korea and Iran that are working towards getting nuclear weapons. Any one of those things, in my opinion, is a pretty large concern. But you add all of those in together, and then on top of all of that, you add in all of these massive protests that are taking place in countries around this planet. And it becomes a very scary situation, as I see it anyway. And, does all this mean that we're on the brink of moving to DEFCON 2? And some sort of a major conflict with, one or possibly both of the other superpowers on this planet? No, not necessarily. But I do think, and like I said, I've heard many of the experts also say that we are closer to a major global conflict than we have been at any time since the Cold War. And in my opinion, that should scare every person on this planet. Because when you are looking at the possibility of the three superpowers on this planet being in a conflict with each other, that is a very bad situation, not only for people in America, Russia, and China, but every single person on this planet. Because if those three countries start going at each other, there's going to be a lot of fallout that hits other countries. That if that happens, that NATO and the UN are going to get pulled into the mix. So then you've got pretty much all of the NATO countries and all of the EU that are going to be into the mix. And then you're also going to have some spillover, I'm guessing, into, the South American country. You've got a lot of countries that are, in between that are going to be pulled to one side or the other. I just don't see if you got those all three superpowers involved in a conflict, that there are going to be any, and if any do, very few countries that manage to stay out of things and that manage to remain neutral. And that's a scary proposition. That's a very scary situation to think about, because that's not something that's going to end well or quickly. And again, it's the worst case scenario. But like I've said many times before, I am a firm believer in analyzing and understanding as many things and as many outcomes to a situation as you can, so you can try at least to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And I'll be the first to admit that I don't have all the answers. I'm not some military strategy genius. I don't have, secret intel. I don't have top secret clearance. And I mean, let's face it, if you had any of those things, you would not be allowed to talk about the information in a video that's publicly available in the first place. A lot of that stuff is even going to be compartmentalized. So even if you did happen to have some level of clearance, the information that you were going to be able to have is still going to be compartmentalized and still be limited. You're not going to be able to see the whole picture. You're not going to be able to have access to the whole picture. And the people that do are going to be maybe dozens, if that. And so if information like that started to come out, they would have a very small number of people that they would be looking to. I encourage discussion on this. What are your thoughts? Am I right on some of it? Am I right on all of it? Am I wrong on all of it? Am I being overly pessimistic in my assumption or my assessment of what may happen? Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think. I am curious. I know there's a lot of people out there that watch these videos and that are, maybe we'll see these videos that know a lot more about this stuff than I do, and will probably have, some great thoughts and insights into things. And I would love to hear what that is. And I hope that I am wrong. I hope that I am being, overly pessimistic on all this because, let's face it, like 99.9% of you out there, I like the life that I have lived at least up until 2020. I like the comforts and the luxuries and, basic things like running water and flushing toilets, hot showers, electricity, heating, air conditioning. I love all of those things. I never want to see a time when we don't have those things. And I know there are, unfortunately, many countries on this planet where having those things, and maybe even something that we consider more basic, like reliable, electricity, is considered a luxury. But I never want to see a situation where we have to go through a period of time where we have to worry about, am I going to have running water tomorrow? Am I going to have heat? Am I going to have food? How am I going to get through this next day? Am I going to see my friends and family again? Those are things that I don't want to consider. Those are things that I don't want to worry about. And pretty much everything that I've talked on this video tonight and many other videos that I've talked about in the last year are all things that I never, ever thought that I would be thinking about in my lifetime. And yet here we are. And the reality of the matter is that many of the things that most of us thought that we would probably never have to consider are now things that we're considering. And that means something has went very drastically wrong in America and many other countries on this planet. And I'm worried about what could possibly come next. So, stay prepared, stay informed, stay safe. For God and country, good night.